Today I'm with my friend Lizzy Nguyen, and she works at a construction and development company in the accounting department. Lizzy and I went to the same college. We were in the same sorority together, so like Delta Phi Lambda, and she was my sorority mom. Do you mind telling me what you identify as ethnically?
Currently, I say that I'm Asian Hispanic, so I'm half and half. I'm Mexican Vietnamese. My dad was actually born in Vietnam and ended up leaving the country, was in China for a bit, and he made his way to America. And my mom actually had a student visa, so she was here studying at the time. So they met here in English school.
It's romantic, like learning how to speak English and falling in love.
So growing up, we were mainly in Chicago. For me, we were there until I was around 5 or 6 years old. And then my parents ended up moving to Lincolnwood.
Growing up, did you visit Mexico and Vietnam?
For a while, it was mainly only Mexico because we didn't really have the money for it. To be visiting Vietnam, it's like 1,500 usually per person, but it was mainly Mexico. Growing up, our first language was Spanish for me and my brother. We mainly grew up learning Spanish, and then my dad, who was trying to learn English, actually started studying Spanish because we had a sitter that spoke Spanish, but we had to learn English in school. Nobody could speak English in the house.
So were you in ESL classes growing up?
I was, yeah, for a while. I did speak English, like enough to communicate. The only thing was there were just a few words that I couldn't translate in English. Like even now there's words that I know how to say it in Spanish, but I won't know how to say it in English. They would pull me out of a class for like specific activities to like expand my English vocabulary. So elementary school, and then by the time I reached middle school, I didn't have to do it anymore.
When and how did you become aware of your Asian identity or your mixed identity?
We were lucky enough to go to a diverse school in Lincolnwood, and same with Niles and Skokie. We were surrounded by diversity at the time, but I think I started realizing it more in high school. There's Latino club, there's Chinese club, there's Korean club, and I couldn't bring my Indian friends to come with me to go to Latino club. It was weird for them. Or my Korean friends wanted me to go to Korean club, and I could and I did, but then everyone's speaking Korean and I'm Mexican. So I think that's where it kind of like started to separate a bit more, especially the ones that were part of like religious activities and stuff to their community. And usually they pertain to like the same race and culture. On top of that, I think the school system itself kind of showed you that, because my counselor, he was a good person, but he spoke for the Latino community. And so I had to fight my way to higher education because he was trying to recommend me the lower classes when my previous teachers were trying to put me in advanced math courses or things like that. It was my Asian friends that, what? That doesn't make sense. Versus my Hispanic friends at the time were like, hey, this class is easy, take it. Like, yeah, it was a breeze.
It's an easy A.
Yeah, it's an easy A. I already took basic algebra. I should be in trigonometry or whatever it was. My counselor was like, well, you're going to need to talk to your parents. And I was like, well, my teachers already recommended me a course. Why should I have to do that? Like, what? My parents didn't study this. They're not going to understand. My parents didn't at the time like understand the educational system and things like that. And I think that was my struggle too. I didn't really know what I needed to do to prepare for college because they had their own education in their countries, and it was so much more different than what it is here. And my dad didn't really go to school in Vietnam. He attended courses here, but it was like one of those like the government pays the schools and they get money if you bring in these specific students to take classes. So it really wasn't the same course that we would follow now. I was fortunate to have had that group of friends from my middle school and from my junior high that came with me to Niles West, to my high school, and they basically kept me on track. They kind of came from a different background in a sense where they already knew about college and what you needed, and this is what AP courses were. And I mean, I took an AP class just for fun because I enjoyed the class and I enjoyed the subject. I had no idea that at the time you would get credit for college courses. Like, it was mind-blowing. And then it wasn't until like my junior year that I was like, I gotta start figuring this stuff out because I'm like so behind. And my parents like had no idea what it was. It just became kind of like an ongoing battle of my Asian dad push, like, you need to be successful. It wasn't really grades. It was more just pass the class, but pass it with a B+. But it was, when you grow up, you know, like, you have to go to college. Versus my Hispanic friends were like, yeah, I'm just gonna do community college for a few years and just figure things out, and then maybe I'll probably get a job. I don't know if I want to go to college. But that mentality was just like, oh, well, if they can do that, I can do that too. Like, what's the rush? All my Asian friends were like, no, like, I'm trying to finish fast. Like, I'm going to college, and I'm going with all this credit already. And then my dad was like, you know, become a doctor. Like, do you see this guy? Like, his son is a doctor. Look how much money he makes. Look where he lives. Look what he does. Or this person's an accountant. They have their CPA. Go do that. Like, you just need to find a way to be happy and make your own money. And then from there, you can start a business. Like, it was just almost like a pre-planned future. Like, it was like, you're going to go to school, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that. And then it's like, whoa, like, but they're not doing that. Why do I have to do that? Like, can't I wait 3 years? And then it was like that subtle threat of, no, because if you stop, then I'm not paying for your school. And you probably got to leave the house. You're finishing, and then you can decide what you want to do. But until then, that's it. But their mentality was, they didn't have the opportunity to do that. So it's kind of like...
So if you do, they want to push you, like, to reach those things that they couldn't.
It was just communicated a little rough. It was like, instead of saying, like, I didn't have this type of life, and this is why I want you to go and do that because you have this opportunity and we can afford it. It was more like, you are going to get the degree, and then you're going to make a business, and you're going to make money. Because if you don't, you're going to get out of this house.
I mean, I think that's the Asian way, honestly.
Yes. My first year or 2 years, I started off, like, with my Hispanic friends. I started embracing that culture because growing up, I didn't really get enough of that through middle school and junior high. Like, I didn't feel that close to those roots. Like, I didn't really listen to, like, Hispanic music, like, the birthday songs. I wasn't aware of the holidays that they usually celebrated or traditions and things like that. So I really, like, wanted to learn more and kind of, like, join that, be part of it.
To be in touch with that side of you.
Yeah. Because my mom doesn't really do much of that at home. And she doesn't cook either, besides speaking Spanish, then visiting Mexico. But there really wasn't none of it. I went into high school and there were these, you know, learn how to dance salsa, learn how to dance bachata, you know, like Dia de los Reyes, let's celebrate this. It's like, do you listen to banda? What is banda? Oh, let me tell you, you know, like, girl, like, let me get you a sombrero. Like, have you been to Little Village? What is Little Village? Like, I can't leave my house. I have an Asian dad. Like, if I leave, it literally, where are you going? Where are you going with? What time are you leaving? What's the plan? Who's driving? Why are they driving? And how old are they? And like, and then it was like, be back in an hour. So then it just got to the point where it was like, I don't even want to go out. Like, but the opportunity was still there in comparison to, you know, doing other activities and whatnot. So I really like stuck on, and it got kind of hard because at the time, and no offense to them if they're watching this, but at the time I felt like they didn't really have the educational goals that fit with the plan that my dad was trying to push for me. So I had told myself, oh, you know, like, whatever, I'm just gonna half-ass and meet my dad's plan halfway, right? And tell myself that this is what I want and I'm not doing it because of him. But I couldn't, because they didn't even see college as a future. Community college, and even then, there was no plan. They were just thinking about going there, not as full-time students. So I had to basically part ways from that, which kind of like sucked on my end, but it was hard because they didn't understand what I was trying to do. They felt like I was trying to be better than them. And that's not really what it was. I was just trying to seek other opportunities. And they were always in detention. Like, these guys were always in detention, just hanging out, like throwing paper balls and things like that. Like, they would tell me the story. They're just like, oh, Lizzy, you're too good. Like, you've never been to detention. And then I started hanging out with Asians. It was a huge flip. AP class friends, they were all like, Lizzy, you're so dumb. You're barely passing. it was
so you were
huge,
like I'm not either one.
I was in the middle of all of it. It was just like, okay, well, you know what? Like, I can just take the easy route, like, take the lower classes and then just pass everything. Or I can, like, barely pass everything, but at least be higher than where I would be if I was here. So I just went for this.
As, like, a second-generation American, like, you have the opportunities that your parents didn't have, so you almost have a sort of responsibility to be better and, like, do more than they could do.
Yeah, there's always that stress.
How was your identity shaped by your family members in Vietnam? Like, did they make you feel different?
My family in Vietnam, I have a lot of cousins. They're all my age, so that was perfect. They thought I was too American, so I was like constantly being called fat, that it was just like, you're too dark. Like, you need to stop going in the sun. Like, why are you not white? Or basically that color that they don't want over there, because they associated it to being a farmer, or if you have to work in the sun, it just means that you don't have a good job, you're not getting paid well, or that you just don't have money. That's why you have to be out there. You shouldn't have to do that. So it was constantly like they would try to like cover me up. Like they have like the really long gloves and they wear like, sun with an umbrella, or like everything, like face mask, and then they have like the caps, rub any sun possible, long sleeves. My mom and my dad, they were indifferent about it. They didn't care. So it's like at home that wasn't a problem I had. But then like socially with my friends, like my Hispanic friends, nice and brown, they're crispy, especially when they're sun. But then my Asian friends, especially the paler ones, were like they were not down to do specific activities. And more like on the Korean end, or like some Vietnamese, mainly the girls, were just like, oh no, like it's hot outside, there's a lot of sun, like let's not do that. Because they wanted to be pale. I'm basically like when I take pictures with my friends, because I'm the tanner one, the phone like will contrast. You know how it does like a contrast with the background? So it makes me darker so that way everyone else is lighter. Versus if I try to focus on myself, everyone else basically becomes like part of the wall.
They get like lightened out. Just like you were pointing out, like our phones, even something that's like supposed to be advanced and, have the technology to be able to do that, might not be able to portray people well. And that's part of how people like think about themselves, right? Through a picture of themselves.
Yeah, because it wasn't until college that I started traveling by myself to other states, and that's when I started realizing like, oh, like that's what they meant when they said they're looking at you, like people are watching.
Like maybe places with less diversity in college, like as an adult.
At DePaul, there's a course when you first start out.
Oh, like as freshmen, like the course that you have to take.
Class, and that's when it officially hit. Like I know that there's predominantly white almost everywhere, right? And then sprinkles of people from other ethnicities, cultures, and the rainbow. But we literally took a class on diversity, and we had to talk about how the white people felt being in a class where there was more than one black person, or this is the first time that they had an Islamic person in their class, or like back in their school there were only 2 Mexican, and then they go, haha, wait, no, I think one was Colombian. It was more for them than I think it was for everyone else. All of a sudden, like everything was amazing, and it just felt so rude. Wow, like this is crazy, like I've never seen that skin color before. Like what? Like this is fascinating to you? Like this is not a zoo, like these are people.
But it didn't, like you said, it didn't necessarily feel as beneficial for you. It was more beneficial for people who
for someone else,
hadn't experienced diversity.
I was just like, why do I have to be part of it? They're talking about me. I'm thinking about the surveys. You know how sometimes you have to fill out like what you are, like whether you're like Asian, Pacific Islander. So I would mark off Asian, but there were a lot of surveys where you could only pick one. If you were Hispanic or Latino, you had to pick Hispanic or Latino. You couldn't like pick the other race. So I had to constantly identify myself as Hispanic Latino. So it was just like, oh, but if you're Hispanic Latino, then mark that one. Don't mark the rest.
How
but
they
then
only
it's
make
like
you choose
I'm marking
one.
off that I'm Hispanic Latino, but my last name is Nguyen. It's like clearly Asian.
How do you think you embody each culture you're from?
I like to say I'm half and half. I might not be, but I haven't really like written it down completely. I'm fluent in Spanish. I definitely feel like I'm more on that side, but I still speak beginners. I understand very little, but I can understand more if I wanted to. I just don't talk to enough Vietnamese people to actually practice the language. But food-wise, I love both. Friends, so I have both. I have both Asian and Hispanic. So I've brought the 2 groups together for birthday parties, and I feel like it's been successful. 2 completely different groups of people that have never met each other, and I feel like they hang out well. But I think I've learned a lot from both sides. My Hispanic friends currently, they basically taught me like, you only live once. Everything is not what it seems. Like don't stick to the rules. Don't stick to whatever the government tells you. But not saying break the rules, but basically saying like you don't have to follow steps A, B, and C. Like you can still have fun. You can still do this. You can try this out. You can take a break. Like you can just stop and it'll be fine. And yeah, there's precautions, right, to like whatever it is that you do, but it's okay to do that. Like don't stress and push yourself. And it was just like I needed that. I needed to see that, realize I don't have to do that, because that's my mentality right now. And I feel like I have a lot of Asian friends that are very like career, like all about like let me do this, this, and this. Like let me grow here. Let me do get this money. Like they just suck it up. And I guess that's where I have my imbalance. Like I'm in between, because I did do accounting. I did graduate and I finished with that degree. Being both has really helped me because I got to see both ends of it, and in their own way, like more financial, right? Like live downtown. My Asian friends, they make good money. They found a way to be happy with what they do, but it just feels very structured in a way. I'm in between. And then there's my friends here that are just like, nope. If I'm happy, I'll do it. If not, then I don't need that. It's hard for me to say if I'm more one or the other, because I'm everywhere. I moved so much. Like one
Well,
year
you're
I'll
the
be-
best of both, basically, because you have, you know, the experience of like seeing how each of your friends live and how their cultures have maybe, you know, affected their decisions. You have been able to like get the best of both and decide for yourself what you want. It sounds like your identity, your multiracial, biracial identity has allowed you to have like a more wider perspective and understanding. Like you've embraced different parts of your culture at different points in your life, and even just like in your friends, and that has overall given you a wider perspective and helped you make decisions about who you want to be, because you don't just see only one thing that's repeated to you and that's the only
I feel
thing.
like I have options. Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Well, thank you so much, Lizzy, for this interview today.